welcome to this piercing edition of Springfield Career Insights. Tonight, we enter a terrain where truth is no longer inherited, it's interrogated, where DNA does not confirm love, but sometimes dismantle it. Across courtrooms and living rooms, we confront a quiet epidemic, men discovering they are not the biological fathers of the children they have raised. Careers unravel, reputations collapse, and families fracture under the weight of concealed truths. This is not just personal, it is institutional. A crisis of identity, economy, and emotional infrastructure. Are we prepared to confront the cost of biological certainty? Can relational commitment survive forensic betrayal? And when fatherhood is reduced to molecules, what happens to memory, mentorship, and meaning? This conversation resists moralism. It interrogates the legal scaffolding of paternity, the emotional toll of revelation, and the cultural silence that enables deception. We are deeply honored to host His Excellency Dr. Godfrey Gandawa, President of Springfield Research University. Tonight, he joins us not to sensationalize, but to systematize, to decode the emotional sabotage, and to offer canonical clarity for Africa's familial and institutional restoration. Welcome to the show, Professor.
Thank you, Advocate. Tonight's theme is not just provocative, it is painful. Paternity fraud is not a scandal. It is a systemic failure. It reveals how truth, when delayed, becomes violence. As Africans, we must confront the architecture behind the betrayals, not just the biology, but the silence, the shame, and the sabotage. Through Education 6.0, we reframe fatherhood as more than genetics. It is governance, guidance, and generational stewardship. Let us not weaponize DNA, but canonize dignity. Let us build frameworks where truth is timely and trust is earned, not assumed. I'm honored to contribute to this necessary reckoning.
Thank you, Professor. Why now? Why is paternity fraud rising across African households? What silent pressures are driving this rupture of trust?
Thank you, Advocate. Why is paternity fraud rising across African households? Because intimacy has been commercialized. We are witnessing a shift where relationships are no longer anchored in commitment, but in transaction. In some cases, women are engaging multiple partners, not for emotional connection, but for economic survival or strategic gain. This is not just infidelity, it is infrastructural erosion, a quiet epidemic where deception is normalized and truth is deferred. But let us be careful. This is not a blanket indictment of women. It is a diagnostic of a society that has failed to embed emotional literacy, economic dignity, and relational accountability. When survival becomes the primary logic, fidelity becomes negotiable. And when trust is treated as optional, fatherhood becomes forensic. Through Education 6.0, we must restore the architecture of relational ethics, where love is not leveraged but lived. Paternity fraud is not just a betrayal of biology, it is a betrayal of belonging, and we must continue to author frameworks that protect truth, restore trust, and dignify every child's right to know who they are and where they come from.
Thank you, Professor. When the courts intervene, do they shield the child or do they silently punish the mother?
So when the courts intervene in cases of paternity fraud, what is their true intent? Is it to shield the child or to silently punish the mother? The answer lies in the architecture of justice itself. Courts are designed to uphold truth, not to arbitrate emotion. Their intervention is meant to protect the child's right to identity, inheritance, and psychological clarity. But in doing so, the mother often becomes the unintended defendant, not just legally, but socially. Why? Because deception, once exposed, demands accountability. And in patriarchal systems, accountability often masquerades as punishment. Yet we must ask, is the mother's deception a symptom or a strategy? Was she surviving or scheming? The judiciary must evolve beyond binary adjudication. It must become emotionally literate. So at Springfield, we advocate for a justice system that does not weaponize truth, but rehabilitates it. A system that shields the child without shaming the mother, that restores trust without erasing context. Because in the end, justice must not only be correct, it must be compassionate.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a commercial break and stay tuned.
To every student who stepped forward, to every dreamer who dared to ask, and to all who walked the red carpet of purpose at the Springfield Expo stand, we thank you. Across regions, classrooms and corridors, you brought this career expo to life. You saw more than brochures. You encountered a mission. Because Springfield isn't a display, it's a dispatch. And our dispatch is not someday, it's now. We are taxiing to the runway. We will soon be airborne. And when we rise, we'll be cruising at 38,000 miles above the ground, above doubt, above delay, above dead industries. You've seen Education 6.0 in action. You've explored our AI career modules, decoded the Smart Innovation Hub, felt the heartbeat of STEMmer, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine and automation. And now, your journey begins. Because you don't just leave with a memory, you leave with a passport to life. I am May. I speak for the President, His Excellency Dr Godfrey Gandawa, and he is calling on you to join the Dispatch Network, to step forward, to stand out, to take your place in the system we're building for Africa and the world. Springfield isn't just a university, it's a sovereign launchpad, and your mission is waiting. Springfield Research University. Join us, be STEMatized. Your passport to life is activated. Applications open now. Dispatch begins soon. Once the gates close, we will be airborne. Our altitude, 38,000 miles above hesitation. Miss this flight, and your journey to success is delayed, until you board the next STEMmer mission. But why wait for destiny when Springfield lets you design it? Learn more at the Springfield Hub or www.springfieldresearch.university. Springfield Research University. The globe is here. Where are you?
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. What truly defines fatherhood? Is it the bloodline, the bond, or the sacred blend of both?
So, what truly defines fatherhood? Is it the bloodline, the bond, or a sacred blend of both? Fatherhood is not merely a biological designation, it is a covenant. The bloodline may initiate identity, but it is the bond that sustains it. A man may share DNA with a child, but without presence, protection, and emotional architecture, that connection remains forensic, not familial. To some, fatherhood is a genetic claim. To others, it is a daily discipline of showing up, of shaping character, of sacrificing itself. But let us be clear, without the bloodline, fatherhood risks becoming sentimental fiction. DNA is not just data, it is the child's right to origin, inheritance, and unaltered truth. Why does this distinction matter? Because in the age of paternity fraud, we must ask not just who the father is, but what fatherhood means. The truth lies in the blend, the sacred fusion of origin and obligation. At Springfield, we define fatherhood as a sovereign role, biologically initiated, emotionally ratified, and socially canonized. Because every child deserves not just a name on a birth certificate, but a presence in their becoming.
Thank you, Professor. Can a single strand of DNA liberate a buried truth, or does it shatter the very family it seeks to clarify?
The answer is both. DNA is not just a molecule, it is a messenger. It carries the architecture of identity, the blueprint of belonging, and the evidence of origin. Why does this matter? Because in a continent where deception is often domesticated, truth must be scientifically affirmed. A single strand of DNA can liberate a man from false fatherhood. It can restore a child's right to know. It can expose betrayal, but also initiate healing. Yet truth, when delayed, becomes disruption. Families built on fiction may fracture when confronted with fact. Bonds forged in silence may break when exposed to signs. But let us be clear, the purpose of DNA testing is not to destroy, it is to dignify. Because without biological clarity, emotional bonds remain vulnerable to collapse. And without truth, justice cannot be served. So at Springfield, we affirm that DNA testing is not an attack on family. It is a safeguard for it. We do not fear the truth, we operationalize it.
Thank you, Professor. Should paternity testing be a birthright, conducted at delivery, not discovery?
Yes. In light of widespread deception and false paternity claims, the answer is unequivocally yes. Because truth delayed is dignity denied. I know many won't like this. Paternity testing must evolve from suspicion to standard. It must be embedded in the architecture of birth, not triggered by betrayal. Why? Because every child deserves biological certainty from day one, not as a courtroom revelation, but as a cradle right. When paternity is confirmed at birth, families are built on truth, not tension. Fathers are affirmed, not accused. Children are protected from identity confusion, inheritance disputes, and emotional displacement. And let us be clear, this is not a war on women. It is a framework for justice. DNA testing at birth is not an act of mistrust. It is an act of institutional foresight. At Springfield, we advocate for sovereign systems where identity is not guessed but guaranteed. Because in the age of forensic fatherhood, truth must arrive with the child, not chase them through life.
Thank you, Professor. What compels a woman to misassign fatherhood? Is it survival, shame, or something deeper we refuse to name?
So the question is, what compels a woman to misassign fatherhood? Then you said, is it survival, shame, or something deeper we refuse to name? The answer is not singular. It is layered, systemic, and emotionally volatile. In many cases, it is survival. A strategic calibration within a society that economically penalizes single motherhood while emotionally rewarding the illusion of paternal presence. In others, it is shame, a fear of judgment, rejection, or abandonment, a desperate choreography to preserve dignity in a culture that weaponizes female vulnerability. But there is another layer we must name without flinching. Some women remain in marriages while bearing children conceived through infidelity. This is not survival. It is a collapse of relational ethics. Here, fatherhood is misassigned not by necessity, but by moral negligence. The home becomes a theater of betrayal, where intimacy is commodified and loyalty is performative. This is not about a gendered indictment. It is about institutional honesty. When the marital covenant is breached in silence, the child becomes the unwitting carrier of a falsified legacy. Does every child deserve the biological truth? Or some truths are heavy for young shoulders, too volatile for homes already balancing on emotional fault lines? This is not merely deception. It is a survival syntax, a moral algorithm recalibrated under pressure. We must name it, not condemn, but to understand. Because when fatherhood is misassigned, it is not just a man who is misled. It is a child whose origin story is rewritten, a society whose emotional ledger is falsified, and a future built on borrowed identity.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to a song called Echoes of Healing.
Through the halls of Springfield, voices rise, seeking hope beyond the pain in their eyes. In the science of the soul, we break through, turning knowledge into healing, pure and true. We stand together, hearts set free. Springfield lives as strong as can be. Through the trials, through the fight, mental health shines in the morning light. Every heartbeat tells a tale untold. Through research and care, futures unfold. Breaking silence, lifting voices high. Springfield stands where the echoes fly. Beyond the fear, beyond the past, we rise with strength. We learn so fast. The power of thought, the will to mend. A journey of care that never ends.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. How do we shield children from the emotional debris when adults wage wars over identity?
We don't shield them by silence. We shield them by structure. When identity is falsified, when a child is born in wedlock but biologically authored elsewhere, the fallout is not just emotional, it is procedural. It affects lineage, legal standing, and the psychological scaffolding upon which the child builds self-understanding. Adults may wage wars over betrayal, custody, or restitution, but the child is not the combatant. They are the terrain. Shielding, therefore, is not about concealment. It is about clarity. Clarity in documentation, clarity in communication, clarity in emotional authorship. Springfield teaches that personal integrity and professional trajectory are often shaped by unseen emotional architecture. And when that architecture is compromised in childhood, the consequences echo into adulthood, into relationships, into leadership, into legacy. So, we shield children not by protecting adults from consequence, but by ensuring that truth is not postponed, because postponed truth becomes inherited trauma.
Thank you, Professor. Is trust more fragile today, fractured by technology, or simply exposed by it?
Trust is not more fragile. It is simply more traceable. Technology, especially DNA testing, is not fractured trust. It has exposed deception that once passed as truth. In previous generations, lineage could be assumed, protected by silence, social norms, or marital convenience. Today, a single test can dismantle decades of inherited falsehood. This is not the cruelty of machines. It is the clarity of evidence. What feels fragile is not trust itself, but is the scaffolding of secrecy that once shielded betrayal. Technology did not break the bond. It revealed what was never bonded to begin with. In the DNA era, trust must be authored with evidence, not assumptions. And if it cannot survive exposure, it was never structurally sound.
Thank you, Professor. Are our family values being rewritten, not by rebellion, but by science itself?
They are being rewritten quietly, surgically, and irreversibly. Not by rebellion, but by revelation. DNA testing has not attacked the family. It has exposed the fault lines beneath it. Across Africa, men are discovering they are not the biological fathers of the children they raised. This is not just a personal betrayal. It is a systemic rupture where lineage, legacy, and legal responsibility collide. Science is not rewriting values with malice. It is confronting the myths we have preserved for comfort. It is asking whether truth should be postponed to protect tradition or whether tradition must evolve to accommodate truth. In this episode, we do not mourn the loss of old values. We interrogate their foundations. Because if a man must leave his job to escape shame, if a child must question their identity to reconcile biology, then the values we defend may not be the values at all, but inherited silences. Science is not the enemy. It is the audit. And the question is whether our families can survive the scrutiny.
Thank you, Professor. Can Springfield lead the continental conversation on ethical paternity testing and relational integrity.
Springfield must lead. Not because we seek prominence, but because we are prepared to author clarity. Paternity testing is no longer a private affair. It is a continental reckoning where biology confronts tradition and the truth demands ethical scaffolding. Across Africa, families are unraveling not because of science, but because of silence. Men are leaving jobs. Children are questioning identity. Courts are overwhelmed by cases that were never meant to be litigated, but must now be resolved. Springfield is uniquely positioned to lead this conversation. We do not treat DNA as data. We treat it as authorship. And authorship demands ethical logic, relational sensitivity, and procedural clarity. We are developing frameworks that protect the child, respect the man, and hold the system accountable. Because ethical paternity testing is not just about results. It is about restitution. It is about relational integrity that survives revelation. So yes, Springfield will lead, not with noise, but with narrative discipline. Not with reaction, but with reform.
That's great, Professor. Thank you. What happens when two men claim one child? Who decides, and what does the child inherit?
It becomes a battlefield of authorship. Not just biological, but emotional, legal, and historical. One man may hold the DNA. The other may hold the memory. And the child stands between them, carrying both truth and trauma. Who decides? Often the courts. But courts are not equipped to adjudicate love, loyalty, or lived experience. They rule on evidence. And evidence in the DNA era is unforgiving. What does the child inherit? A fractured origin story. A legacy contested by two men, each claiming fatherhood, each rewriting the narrative. This is not just a legal dilemma. It is a psychological inheritance. Because when fatherhood is disrupted, the child inherits not just names, but questions. Not just support, but suspicion. At Springfield, we argue for a framework that goes beyond biology. One that respects relational history, protects emotional integrity, and ensures that the child is not reduced to a genetic certificate. Because in the end, the child must inherit more than truth. They must inherit stability.
Thank you, Professor. Should our schools teach identity construction, not just biology, but belonging?
Thank you. The answer is yes. Because biology tells us what we are, but belonging tells us who we are. Our schools must evolve from sites of instruction to sanctuaries of identity. Not just teaching chromosomes, but context. Not just heredity, but heritage. When a child learns they were misattributed, misnamed, or misclaimed, the trauma is not just scientific, it is existential. Education 6.0 demands that we scaffold identity, that we teach children how to narrate themselves, not just recite facts, that we embed emotional architecture into the curriculum so that every learner knows, I am not just born, I am authored. Belonging is not a bonus, it is a biological necessity. Because without it, DNA becomes a diagnosis, not a doorway. So yes, our schools must teach identity construction, because in a continent where names are contested, belonging must be canonized.
Thank you, Professor. Where do men go when paternity trauma strikes? Are support structures real or rhetorical?
Too often, they go nowhere. because the structures are rhetorical. The sympathy is performative, and the silence is institutional. When a father learns he is not the father, or that he is but was denied, he enters a grief that is no grammar, no hotline, no sanctuary. Society tells him to man up. But there is no manual for mourning a child who still lives. No protocol for loving a child who is now labeled not yours. At Springfield, we argue for emotional infrastructure, not just for mothers, but for men. Because paternity trauma is not just a legal twist, it is a psychological rupture. Support must be real, embedded in policy, visible in schools, clinics, and courts. Men must be allowed to grieve, to process, to belong. Because if we deny men emotional architecture, we build institutions on repression. And repression breeds rupture. So yes, support structures must be real, not rhetorical, not optional, canonical.
Thank you, Professor. Let's take a break and listen to a song called Echoes of Justice.
Echoes of justice in the heart of Springfield, where justice calls, students rise, breaking down the walls. With passion and purpose, they stand tall, bridging theory and practice, answering the law's call. Springfield Law Clinic, where dreams take flight, empowered in the people, shining bright. From the courtroom to the streets, we fight for justice, for freedom, day and night. Hands-on learning, shaping future minds, navigating the system, leaving no one behind. With every case, every client they find, building confidence, problem solving, intertwined. Springfield Law Clinic, where dreams take flight, empowered in the people, shining bright. From the courtroom to the streets, we fight for justice, for freedom, day and night. Techno beats and country soul, electronic rhythms make us whole. Whoa. Feel the power, feel the drive. Springfield Law Clinic, we thrive. Dance for justice, hearts ignite. Together we shine in the spotlight. Springfield Law, we stand tall. Oh, justice for all. Oh, Springfield Law, hear the call. Oh, together we won't fall. In our community, we make a stand, helping those in need, lending a hand with every victory. We expand, creating change across this land. Springfield Law Clinic, where dreams take flight, empowering the people, shining bright. From the courtroom to the streets, we fight for justice, for freedom, day and night. Together we stand, united and strong. Springfield Law Clinic, where we belong. With every step, every dance, every song,
welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. Can family counseling become a preventative tool, not just a post-crisis remedy?
It must. Because waiting for rupture is institutional negligence. Family counseling should not be the ambulance. It should be the architecture. A place where identity is rehearsed, not repaired. Where belonging is scaffolded before it's shattered. So, in the DNA era, truth arrives fast, but emotional readiness lags. We need frameworks that prepare families for revelation, not just console them after it. So Education 6.0 embeds emotional literacy. SIM embeds sovereign identity mapping. Together, they demand that counseling be upstream, not downstream. Preventative counseling means fathers are prepared for possible disconfirmation. Children are taught that love can outlive biology. Mothers are supported in narrating truth without fear. This is not therapy. It is emotional governance, and it must be institutionalized. Because when counseling is canonical, families don't just survive crisis, they preempt it.
Thank you, Professor. Do children need genetic closure to grow, or can love alone anchor identity?
Closure is not always genetic. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's relational. Sometimes it's the voice that stayed when the truth walked in. DNA gives answers, but love gives anchoring. And anchoring is what children need to grow. We have seen children thrive without knowing their biological origins, because someone showed up consistently, tenderly, canonically. But we have also seen children collapse under the weight of genetic revelation, because the truth came without love, without context, without continuity. Education 6.0 teaches us that identity is layered. Biology is one layer, but love, memory, ritual, and naming, these are sovereign layers too. So yes, children can grow without genetic closure, but only if love is structured, only if belonging is rehearsed, only if the emotional scaffolding is strong enough to hold the weight of uncertainty. Because in the end, it's not just DNA that defines us. It's who stayed, who named us, who authored our becoming.
Thank you, Professor. Television shows glamorizing paternity drama, turning pain into entertainment.
Yes, and it's a dangerous dramaturge. Paternity trauma is not a plot twist. It's a rupture, a child's origin story, a father's emotional architecture, a mother's moral reckoning. But on television, it becomes a punchline, a rating spike, a spectacle of shame. We watch men collapse, women cry, children stir, unprocessed, unprotected, and the audience applauds, not realizing they are clapping for unresolved grief. At Springfield, we argue for sovereign storytelling, where pain is not glamorized but dignified, where identity is not exploited but scaffolded. Education 6.0 teaches narrative ethics. SIM embeds emotional restitution. Together, they demand that media respect the sanctity of family rupture. Because when trauma becomes entertainment, we lose the plot, not just on screen, but in society. So yes, television must evolve from voyeurism to vigilance, from drama to dignity.
Wow, this is amazing. Let's take a commercial break and stay tuned.
Do you want to be a leader, industrialist, manufacturer, entrepreneur, or expert in your field? Join Springfield Research University, the university of next-generation innovators and inventors. Admissions for August-September 2025 are now open. At SRU, we STEMatize, industrialize, and modernize, SIM. Choose an industry-relevant undergraduate, master's, or doctoral program and be the future. Apply today at www.springfieldresearch.university or WhatsApp +0268 7619 2898. Springfield Research University, where innovators learn.
Welcome back. Let's continue with our discussion. How do we narrate male emotional pain with dignity, not denial?
We begin by listening, not to the silence, but to what the silence conceals. Male emotional pain is often denied, delayed, or disguised, wrapped in stoicism, buried beneath duty, masked by performance. But pain denied is pain multiplied. And when men are denied narrative space, they inherit rupture without release. To narrate male pain with dignity, we must abandon ridicule, reject emotional illiteracy, replace shame with structure. Education 6.0 embeds emotional architecture, SIM demands sovereign expression. Together, they create a grammar for male grief, one that is not performative but profound. We must teach boys that tears are not weakness, that heartbreak is not failure, that fatherhood, when fractured, deserves mourning. Because when men are allowed to narrate pain, they become authors of healing, not just to themselves, but for the children watching them. So yes, male emotional pain must be narrated with dignity, with structure, with sovereign voice.
Thank you, Professor. Does every child have the right to know their biological father, or does that right come with conditions?
Yes, every child has the right to the truth. But truth, in the context of paternity, must be scaffolded, not weaponized. So biological knowledge is not just data. It is identity, it is emotional architecture. It is the foundation upon which belonging is built. But timing matters, context matters, delivery matters. A child's right to know must be protected, but also prepared for. Because revelation without readiness can rupture more than it restores. Education 6.0 teaches us that identity is layered, SIM embeds sovereign authorship. Together, they argue for truth with structure, not delayed indefinitely, but delivered responsibly. So yes, every child has the right to know their biological father, but that right must be exercised with emotional intelligence, legal clarity, and relational sensitivity. Because truth is not just what we give, it's how we give it and when we give it where. We don't just inform the child, we anchor them.
Thank you, Professor. And finally, President, what message would you leave with our viewers tonight as they confront the fragile architecture of truth, trust, and fatherhood?
Thank you, Advocate. Fatherhood is not a name on a birth certificate. It is a covenant written in presence, not just in blood. Fatherhood must be authored with truth, not assumption. And truth must be made accessible, not elusive. We propose a sovereign policy shift. DNA testing at birth, standard, affordable, and dignified. Accredited DNA centers embedded in hospitals, clinics, and community hubs. Legal safeguards for those who discover paternity fraud, offering solace, not stigma. Because the trauma of deception must not be compounded by institutional silence. And those who have loved children under false belief must be told. This is not the end. It is the beginning of a new authorship. So tonight, we do not just mourn the fractures. We propose the framework. We do not just expose the pain. We legislate the pathway. Let every child be born into truth. Let every father be anchored in certainty. And let every family, however it begins, be built on authorship, not accident. Not every father is present, but every child deserves presence. Not every truth, when told with dignity, can become a doorway, not a wound. Thank you for having me.
President, thank you for reframing paternity fraud not as private betrayal, but as institutional collapse. Tonight, we have exposed the silent arithmetic of identity theft, where biology is weaponized and fatherhood becomes a forensic accusation. You have shown us that DNA is not just data, it is destiny, and when misused, it destabilizes careers, corrodes trust, and bankrupts entire family economies. To our audience, if you are ready to confront the cultural cost of concealed truths, to embed frameworks that protect children from identity collapse and men from reputational ruin, then join us. Visit www.springfieldresearchuniversity.net and become part of the continental effort to restore relational integrity through canonical infrastructure. That concludes tonight's edition of Springfield Career Insights. May these reflections rewire your assumptions, restore your editorial empathy, and remind you fatherhood is not just a fact, it is a framework. I am Clarence, your host. Until next time, walk with wisdom. Good night.
Siyakhuphuka tikitile futhanza lungakiwa hey 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 siyakhuphuka sonke siyavumelana ngemjululo omuhle sonke similela.
In the halls of Springfield, where dreams take flight, faculties diverse, shining bright. From arts and law to business and education, a world of knowledge, endless exploration. Springfield, where futures are made, agricultural and earth, sciences, health and medical aid, engineering and electronics, innovations cause postgraduate studies. We systematize and industrialize all. In labs and classrooms, brilliance unfolds. Students choose paths, stories told. Science and technology, where minds ignite. Springfield stands tall, a beacon of light. Springfield, where futures are made, agricultural and earth, sciences, health and medical aid, engineering and electronics, innovations called postgraduate studies. We systematize and industrialize all. With dramatic strings and brass so bold, a cinematic climax, stories untold. Springfield's legacy, a tale so grand. Future leaders rise, taking a stand. Springfield, where futures are made,
In the heart of Springfield, a new dawn breaks. With Channel Yamaswati, our future takes shape. Career insights, knowledge shared so bright. Together we rise, reaching new heights. Springfield's calling, let's unite. With Channel Yamaswati, we ignite. Innovation and growth, we lead the way. Together we shine, here to stay. Together we rise, together we shine. Springfield and Yamaswati, celebration time, our vision clear. With collaboration, there's nothing to fear. Education and research, hand in hand, building a future where dreams will stand. Springfield's calling, let's unite. With Channel Yamaswati, we ignite. Innovation and growth, we lead the way. Together we shine, here to stay. Together we rise, together we shine. Springfield and Yamaswati, all throughout, all time. Springfield and Yamaswati, partners for all time. Doors are opening to a world so grand. In STEM fields we proudly stand. Channel Yamaswati, our guiding light. Together we conquer, our future bright. Springfield's calling, let's unite. Let's unite. With Channel Yamaswati, we ignite. Innovation and growth, we lead the way. Together we shine, here to stay. Together we rise, together we shine. Together we rise, together we shine. Together we conquer, no challenge too steep. Challenge to spring, research university, our guiding star. With Channel Yamaswati, we'll go far.